What's up guys, Adam here, hope everyone is doing well. This week you're going to hear my interview with York-based musician Michael Collinson. Michael's been a full-time musician for the past 15 years or so and performs all over Northern England in a number of groups, both cover and original. I met Michael at RWB Music, which is in downtown York, and it quickly became clear that he was one of us. So I scheduled some time at his studio on premises and we talked through his journey through music and how he's managed to stay busy all of these years. Big thanks to the folks at RWB Music for hosting me. They're an amazing independent music store, and if you're ever in the area, you should definitely pop in and say hello. I'll have links to them and all of Michael's projects in the description. All right, let's get into my conversation with Michael Collinson. So Michael, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to chat.
Pleasure.
The short story goes that I was staying at the hotel by here and saw there was a guitar store, popped in, and you and I had a lovely conversation just kind of about the stuff that you guys sell, and then getting into what you do outside of working at this guitar shop. So kind of starting from the beginning, because that's the best place to go from. How did you get into music? How were you exposed to it? When did it kind of become more than just an obsession or a hobby and looked more to be like a career option for you?
Well, I'm hoping one day it will be a career option. No, it's one of those things that my family weren't musical. My dad is, and always has been, a big fan of music, but doesn't play any instruments. So from a young age, we were going to see a lot of bands. One of the first gigs I went to was the Kinks back in, gosh, 80s at some point. The first one I ever saw was Suzanne Vega. Okay. And that just blew my mind that somebody was able to do that in front of people and not just hear it from a record player, as we had back in the 80s. And it was one of those things that I'd always loved the music because of my dad. He got me into it. And I started to learn guitar when I was about 17, 18. I'm not a drinker. My friends all went to the pub. I went twice. First time hated it. Second time confirmed I hated it. So I went home, stayed at home on a Friday night, Saturday night, and learned guitar. Just to play a few records at home, just to play along with them. So it was never a thought, oh, this could be a job. But then about 6 or 8 months after picking up the guitar, I thought I'd like to actually play a gig or an open mic night. There's a lot in York, there certainly was back then. So I went along to a couple of open mic nights. I found it was the only way I could actually sort of see people I knew, because they'd be out drinking. So I thought, well, I'd go along with them, sing a few songs. I really enjoyed it. I wasn't very good, but I really, really enjoyed it. And then about another 6 months, about a year into playing, give or take, I did my first proper gig, a support slot for a friend of mine's band. And that was it. That was just, no, this is it. This is all I want to do. I tried. Works at other jobs, as you do, because you don't go straight into music to make money. And I would say it was about 18 years ago my daughter was born. It was around when she was on the way that I decided, no, I'm doing this full time. The wrong time to choose to go into music, but I thought, I've now got an impetus to go, I have to earn X amount of money, pay for the house, pay for the family. And I thought, I'll give it a year. And if I haven't got to the point where I can sustain a career within 12 months, I'll go back to stacking shelves or in an office, anything. Sure. And about 10 or 11 months in, it just about was breaking even. I thought, this is possibly sustainable. I'll give it another 12 months. And never looked back, never stopped. I was doing a lot of solo gigs, and I joined a couple of bands, and then sort of went from there. I just never wanted to do anything else from the moment I made my first sort of appearance as a solo musician, doing a full gig on my own. I just thought, I can't do anything else. There's just nothing else is like this. Yeah, I think we all have those moments. I do think it's kind of interesting that you said you went to the pub and you're like, this isn't for me. And then you proceeded to spend the rest of your... All my life is now in pubs. Yeah. Yes. Judging people, obviously, for drinking.
We don't ever do that.
No.
We're professionals. So as far as the kind of the lane that you found yourself in, I'm assuming, I mean, this is going to vary market to market.
Yes, of course.
But what of those gigs immediately became like, okay, this is going to be the thing that is going to keep me busy, it's going to keep me consistent, and is suitable, as far as finances go?
It was a combination of, I thought, well, I was doing the gigs, and I paired that up with doing some lessons. So teaching a bit of guitar and a bit of, I play a few other instruments. So I also play a bit of ukulele and a bit of piano and bass and mandolin and banjo. So I teach those, or I was teaching those instruments alongside. And it was one of those things, and occasionally busking, it was one of those things that I thought, well, I can't sustain it doing one thing. I need to do 3 or 4 different things. And then that sort of moved on in more recent years to also doing things like repairs on guitars, setups, work on guitars and other instruments. So I don't think any of them are particularly sustainable on their own. Certainly not in the current climate anyway.
Right.
But they don't need to be, because I also, it's the variety as well. I've been able to do that, because I think some people might get a bit jaded if they're just doing the same thing, even if they love it.
Right.
I can see somebody getting completely jaded after several years of doing nothing but the same thing. And so the next step, I suppose, is I'm looking at cruise work, again, to have that another bit of variety there, because I can always come back, keep going with the lessons, keep going with the gigs on land, and the repairs and stuff. So it's that variety I enjoy, even though it's all within the same business, so to speak.
Yeah. And York is interesting in a sense that it being kind of a tourist destination, that there appears to be live music happening pretty much every night of the week. It's
a strange little city. I mean, I've lived here all my life, so I've never known anywhere else. So whenever I've visited other places, I've been to London and Leeds and Glasgow and things like that, and they always seem so big. But York seems to have, touch wood, a really good music scene. There's several pubs at Golden Fleece where I play regularly. They do music 7 nights a week, which is unusual.
It's also
in England, anyway.
Yeah, it's also the most haunted pub.
Allegedly. Allegedly, yes.
You haven't made any friends?
No. Living or dead, no. But it's really good as York. There is also my sister. She works at a music venue called the Fulford Arms, and they do.
I walked by that on the way back.
But they do a lot of original songs.
They do.
Original gigs in there, which is brilliant. I think that's one thing that's really. It almost seems unfair that if you're a general musician covering all sorts, you get a certain amount of gigs and pay, and as you go sort of more and more niche, the money gets more. You know, if you're doing an ABBA tribute, you get more than you would do for just doing a general night of all sorts of music. And then the other end of the spectrum is the singer-songwriters, or the people, bands doing their own stuff where people don't want to pay for it. So it's really nice in York. We've got a couple of venues that are willing to have that sort of thing and promote it heavily. There's the Fulford Arms and there's the Crescent. They have a lot of stuff. And Crescent's kind of next tier up. There's a lot of acts on the way up through there, and some that have maybe been bigger in the past play there now. It's a good venue. There used to be the Victoria Vaults as well, which has sadly closed down recently. So it's a tricky one with originals. But luckily we have a couple of venues, and hopefully there's rumours there might be another one opening up soon. So we shall see. We shall see.
Fantastic. So in our conversation the other day, it kind of became clear that you also run a couple of bands. Like you are the band leader, as it were, and that's typically the subject that we cover. So at what point did you transition from being a person who played to being the person who's kind of running the show?
I think in one of the bands it was as simple as I had the PA.
But you already had made that decision to buy one.
Yes, yeah. Well, I used to have a small PA for doing gigs because I didn't drive. So on a bus, on a train, you don't want to be carrying too much gear. When I did learn to drive, it was no, I need to get something a bit more substantial. And then I ended up joining a band as the guitarist because somebody was leaving, and it turned out my PA was better than the one they currently had. So I ended up running that one purely out of that. It was, the biggest PA wins. And then from there, I enjoy it because although it's a lot more work, because you have to do all the running around for the gigs and you have to do all the liaisons with the venues and sorting out posters and advertising. It's going to sound like I'm a control freak, but I like to be in control of that because I know if somebody else is in charge of it, there's a chance of it not happening. I would rather make sure everything was done. Because at the end of the day, if you don't advertise a gig, people aren't going to come. Right. So you've got to do all that work. And a lot of musicians, sorry, that's not fair. Musicians are very good, but a lot of people who do music alongside other work don't see it necessarily in the same light as somebody who does music full time.
Right.
It's a bit of fun. It's a hobby that maybe pays a bit of money. It's almost a night out. It's paid for. Whereas I think when you are a full-time musician, you realise how much of a job it is alongside the fun. And don't get me wrong, it's brilliant, but it is hard work.
Yeah.
I mean,
of course.
Yes, it's...
it takes a certain kind of person with a certain kind of personality to take that on. And there is very much a level of control or having a say in things that is kind of important. For me, it was a situation where I was a part of a group, where I was just you show up, you do the thing. And when things went south, all of the hours, sweat equity, and years that I put into this project I had nothing to show for it other than some cool stories. And realizing that I didn't want to put myself in that position again, making the decision to I will just do this myself now.
Yeah, makes sense.
And it is kind of, there's an entrepreneur like mentality about that, where it's, because bands are businesses. That's the way that we look at them. And, businesses can be run lots of different ways, and they can be run well, or they can be run poorly.
Yes.
So having a little bit of business acumen is always important.
Yeah, and I think in a band situation, I think when young bands get together, they share the responsibilities to a degree, but there comes a point where somebody does more. Yep. And they end up naturally moving into that position.
Right.
And I think some people maybe resent that because they're like, well, why am I doing everything? And I don't think that's the right attitude. You can't take that attitude, because if you do that, then you're going to split. You're going to go in separate ways, because you start having issues with the other band members because they're not doing enough, or they have issues because they think you're doing too much. And I think you've got to have that sort of mentality to be able to go, well, I can do all this. If anybody wants to do anything, they're more than welcome. But be willing to take it back if they don't want to in the long run.
Right.
Or if they're not doing it to the level you're happy with.
Yeah, and it takes a level of commitment that can be hard to find.
Yeah.
With musicians, especially ones who are busy.
Yes.
Finding somebody who can dedicate all of their time to a particular project, where you can, because it's yours.
Yes.
It makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
We definitely go through seasons of that. I find that every year, me and my co-host have so we're going to quit this year episode, and it's right around this time as the year wraps up.
Right. Well, I'm glad you asked me for your final episode.
Brilliant. So what are you all involved in? So what bands are you a part of? What does your mix look like?
Right. Well, I've got, solo stuff. I've got a 6-piece soul band, which I joined about 8 months ago now, fairly recent for me.
What are they called?
It's called the 404 Club.
Okay.
They're all fairly new, with the exception of Christy, one of the singers. They're all fairly new to doing music as actually paid gigs and stuff. They've always dabbled a bit. This is kind of their first foray, and it's really fun because it's like starting again in a good way, but with the knowledge that I've gained over 25, 30 years of, being involved in music. So that's really good. I mean, in fact, the piano player, Pierce, asked me the other day, he said, why are you still with us? I said, well, the drummer's got some photos on me. And I said, I'm just enjoying it. I said, it's great. The money's not great yet. But I said, we're also working up to that point. I said, I've got a long-term plan, which is, your weddings, your functions, your stuff like that, which is back end of next year onwards. So this next year, get as many gigs as we can. Doesn't matter if they're low paid, get the experience for them. And because they are still working alongside this, that they haven't got the commitment to go, we can do 3 gigs a week, 4 gigs a week.
Right.
They're looking for 2 or 3 a month, tops.
Sure.
Which is perfect. So that's a good, steady amount, and it means I've got enough free time to do the gigs that pay what is kind of expected at this level, which is good. I've then got another function band, which we don't do many gigs, for similar reason, they all work. But that's good for 6 or 7 decent paid ones a year.
Okay.
But they will only go out for a certain fee, they won't go any less, and that's brilliant. And it's quite flexible. We've got stand-ins for me, we've got stand-ins for all the players. We have a B and a C player. So if somebody can't make a gig, they can still do the gig.
Right.
Which is how you need it to be with those sort of bands. I've got a 3-piece sort of traditional pub band, if you like, called Easygoing. And we've been together for 20 years, but not in the format we are. Sadly, when I joined. It was a 4-piece when I joined, and sadly all 3 other members have passed away since I joined. They were older than me, but still. We lost Clive, the bass player, recently. He stepped down a couple of years ago, but sadly passed away about 3 months ago now. So but as a band name is still going. I've been there founding member, say 20-something years now. And then I've got a duo called The Lights, and that's my original outlet. We do a lot of our own stuff. We're just on with our second album. We released the first one a couple of years ago now, and the second album was about halfway through recording. The first one recorded in a little studio out towards where Holly lives, Bradford Way. This one we're doing in, now I've got a little studio, we're doing it here, which makes sense to me. So we don't have to outsource to anyone unless, and what I will do is when it comes to the final mastering, that will go to someone else. Right. Because I think it's good to have somebody else. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I think there's so much you can do yourself. And if I have released songs myself with doing everything, and I'm proud of them. But with this, it's slightly different. I just would like to get somebody else to do the final little tweaking. Right. So yeah, that's sort of my main things. I'm also involved in a country band called Belle Velvet. Belle Velvet is a young lass. She's a phenomenal singer, writer, and we don't do loads of gigs. She's just gone to university. I mean, she's young, but I started off teaching her guitar because she wanted to play some of her own songs instead of using backing tracks. And then she sort of got involved in writing with her a bit and doing some production and gigging with her. And hopefully that'll come back when she's got time after university. Again, that's sort of a bit of a project. She's got 2 or 3 people she can call in if I'm not available and the bass player's not available, etc. Got it. And it's just good fun. Again, it's one of those things that you do as much as you can and hope something sticks. Yeah. So, people's musical tastes change quite rapidly, unfortunately. Well, and it seems like you're covering a pretty wide swath of material. So. Yes, trying to disappoint as many people as possible. That's the spirit. Yes, absolutely. So how many nights a week are you working? I work nearly every night. Tuesdays I have rehearsal with the soul band. But outside of that, I pretty much, if I'm not gigging, I'm teaching every night. But gig-wise, I would say at least on average, I mean, this week, what we are now, Thursday, so I had last night, tonight, tomorrow, so I've got 6 this week in total. There's a couple on Saturday. So some days you fit more than one in, which is quite lucky. Because I think that's the biggest problem with music is people say, oh, you're getting paid this much for doing a couple of hours. Forgetting that you can't do that all day. Right. Because pubs, venues, clubs, they're not hiring bands all day. Yeah. They've got 1 a week, maybe some places 2 a week. But yeah, so this week it's got 6 gigs. Run up to Christmas, silly season, it gets busier. Yeah. I think the most I've had in a day was 4. That was fun. Was that like on a particular, like a holiday or? No, that was just happened to be, there was I did a wedding fair, a festival, and then 2 pub gigs, all in an afternoon and an evening. So that was fun. Driving around Yorkshire, trying to get between venues. But yeah, again, in a situation where there's enough work to be had to do 4 gigs, like some places that people that don't have 4 gigs in a month's time. Yeah. So it is pretty remarkable. Ultimately, the conversation I want to have is kind of the difference between what we experience in the States versus what's happening here. And you have a very unique situation because you are in a town with a lot of live music. Other than probably Nashville, Tennessee is probably the only other place where you can be as busy consistently like that. If you have those kind of standing gigs, because they have bands from open to close every single day. Yeah. Does there seem to be kind of a standard pay scale? Like most of these gigs pay about the same thing, or? It does vary a bit. I would say that there's the main issue with England, and this is speaking from up north. I can't say I think London's better paid, but that's mainly because a loaf of bread in London's 25 quid, so they have to pay a bit more. But I mean, we're doing gigs around here anywhere between, I think the cheapest one that I will happily do, because it's a midweek one, is £80. Okay. For 2.5 hours. And I was doing the math. I saw a gig, because I ended up joining one of the
Facebook groups just to kind of get an idea of what was going on, and saw roughly it was somewhere between like 80 and 100 pounds, which 90 quid is about $112 US. So it's about $100 gig.
Yeah.
You know, for like a pub deal.
Yes.
And is that 2 hours, 4 hours? What's the...
I'm a bit different to a lot of people. A lot of people will do 2 45 minutes or 2 50-minute sets.
Okay.
I start and then I finish. I don't have a break. I just play for 2.5 hours solid. Okay. In those events. I like playing. That to me is free.
Right.
I'll do that all day.
It's the hauling and setting up.
Yeah, you pay me for 25 years of playing, practicing, buying gear. But I know some people don't like that I do that, but that's just how I do it. Yeah. I've got nothing against someone who does it. And 40 minutes has a break, 40 minutes has a break. We all have different ways of doing it. But I would say that most venues expect, at the moment, it seems to be actually about 45 minutes if you're doing an evening. Yeah. Friday or a Saturday.
In the States, it's usually 3 to 4 hours is what we're assigned to cover for the most part. Yeah. And everybody kind of has their own like way that they approach it. Yeah. I think to me, it depends on whether I'm standing or sitting. Right. Standing, I probably might take a few more breaks just to...
Fair enough, yeah. No, when I do solo stuff, I do a lot of looping. Okay. So I have to stand. I can't sit and loop. I need to stand.
Well, what loop are you using?
I've got the Boss RC600. Okay. Because I can put the keyboard into that. I've got a little drum machine that goes into that. The vocals go into it, and the guitar through an amp modeler, which also I've got a bass modeler on, so I can do the bass lines on the guitar. So I can get full band sound just on my own. That's my favourite gigs to do at the moment, but it wouldn't be if that's all I was doing. Right. It needs to have the other ones to complement it. But the Boss RC600 has been... I know there's some backlash over some of it's been crashing on some people, but technology does that. They make, I don't know how many of them they'll have made, and if 100 of them fail, it's going to be a small percentage. Sure. And I think people forget that, especially, it's just luck of the draw sometimes with these things. You buy a brand new car, it can fail, so there's no... I've never had a problem with the Boss stuff. I've used the Boss loopers for a long time. I had the 300 before, and a little, was it the RC20 years before that? The first one I ever got, though, was Akai E2 Headrush. Yeah. Which was the one that, I can't remember her name now, but she used it on Jules Holland, Black Horse and Cherry Tree. Kitty Tunstall. Kitty Tunstall. And I got it because she used it. I thought, that's brilliant. I mean, it's got 28 seconds of loop. But back in... 20-something years ago, that was brilliant. Yeah. And I still use it today, but not for looping. It's a phenomenal delay pedal. And it's got 5 outputs. So you can send your dry signal, then 4 wet signals to different amps. That's fun to set up. I don't do that very often, but when I do, it sounds massive. I bet. Yes. What are some consistent hits? What are the songs that, always get people's attention here? At the moment, I would say... Weirdly, a lot of the older songs go down well, wherever you do them. So things like, The Monkees' I'm a Believer just goes down well everywhere. Everybody knows it, whether they're 6 or 60 or... Because of Smash Mouth. Yeah. From the Shrek movies. Yes. I suppose, I always forget that people copy songs. And there's Lewis Capaldi. A couple of his songs go down well. I have a slight preference for the older stuff. I'm a big Bowie fan. I tend to throw in things like Rebel Rebel, and again, stuff like that just goes down well. People know it, they remember it. I always say when you're playing a song, if pure acoustic, especially, people fill in the blanks because they know the song. Right. So don't worry about hitting every part of it. It's not possible unless you're Tommy Emmanuel or something. But generally speaking, people fill in the blanks. So just go for it. Do you do a good Bowie, or everybody has their own takes on these things? I try my very hardest to not sound like them, because I think if you sound like them, great. And if you sound close, people think, well, you're trying to sound like them. Yeah. So I try not to. At the end of the day, a good song's a good song. But I did. What did I do recently? There was a song I did, George Ezra song. And somebody came up to me after and said, I can't stand George Ezra, but I really liked your version, because I changed it enough. Right. Part of the reason I change songs is I don't listen to them enough to remember them properly. So I think if you get too caught into trying to memorize it exactly.
Right.
Put your own spin on it. It's good to do. Unless you're doing a tribute act, that's a bit different.
Right.
But I think it's good to have a bit of a spin on a song. Especially when I do the looping stuff, I have to.
Yeah.
I have to change parts, or I have to omit parts sometimes, or just be creative. But yeah, I think that's sort of the best way to go ahead with songs. I like taking requests as well, which some people don't like doing, because they like to practice them. I always think, well, if somebody's asked for a song and you don't nail it, it doesn't matter. They know they've just asked for it. They know that you're doing it off the cuff, probably. And if it goes well, if it sounds like something I could do in future, it goes on the list. Sure. That's how you build your lists. Absolutely. If you go with just what you like, it's not necessarily the right songs for the audience. Yeah. I think you've got to have that variety of, I don't like this, but it goes down well. Yeah, if you can switch the mentality to the thing that I enjoy about this is the enjoyment that other people are getting from it, which can be a challenge. Yeah, there's certain songs. I'm not a fan of Oasis. I never was. I never will be. They're massive again right now because they're back. He said some very controversial things off camera that I will not repeat. Yes, watch yourself. But you'll play them. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. I try not to, but I will. Yeah. It depends on the audience as well. If they've been a really good audience and somebody asks for it, I'll give them it. Yeah. If they've been awful, no. Never heard of them. Well, Oasis? Wow. No idea. Right, they don't throw rocks at you at that point. Good thing you don't play where places where there's rocks laying around. Yes. Well, it's probably good I'm not in America. They've got more dangerous things than rocks. That's true. You haven't played a honky tonk. No. They're couple, I've got some fun stories. We can talk about that later. So if you're playing a gig and no one is really paying attention, what's the song that you do for you? Like you just like playing that you may not get requests for? One of these nights by the Eagles. I just love that song. And it's an Eagles song that is probably less well known over here. Anyway, everybody knows Hotel California. That's the one everybody asks for. But I'll shove something like that in. Take It Easy is usually a good one. Yes. We get that a lot. Yeah, that's a good song. Again, that does get asked for. But for me, something like that, or any Bowie that's maybe a bit less known, or even one of my own occasionally. Yeah. Why not? Why not? It's tricky with audiences because sometimes they are listening, but they might not be giving you much back. But that's because they're in their own little world as well. It depends on the venue. Some venues you expect to be background music. Yeah. I play The Botanist, which is a franchise that's around the UK. You're literally background music there. Very rarely do you get sort of audience interaction. Maybe on a Saturday night, but I do a lot of Wednesdays and Thursdays as well. Sure. So, but I'm happy with that. It's nice. It's one of the few gigs I get to sit at the piano for as well. Because I play mainly guitar when I do gigs, but it's nice with The Botanist because I mix it up with the piano and the guitar. So it's good fun. Yeah, I think it's... When you're doing shows like that where you know that you're not necessarily the focal point, I think it's actually a good thing to play the songs that you want to play, especially if you're not getting requests for them, because I think that keeps you as the performer locked into what you're doing. Definitely. So it's kind of it can be a mixed bag, but usually it's beneficial just based on the fact that what you're doing, you can tell that you're enjoying yourself. Yeah. Or the audience can tell whether they're locked in or not. I think there is a big part of it has to be enjoyment, because that's why, in theory, that's why you're going into it. Nobody's going into it to make money, to start with. Yeah. It has to be enjoyment because it's one of those things like anything in the arts, whether it's painting or creating of any description, it's fun. It should be fun. I've always said if I stop enjoying it, I'll stop doing it because the work isn't worth it for the financial reward, but it's worth it in other ways. Yeah. And I do keep spending the money on guitars, as you can probably see. So that is one of the problems with working in a music store, isn't it? Yes. I'm very lucky. I volunteer here. I help Jeff, the owner. I've known him for about 10 years now, since he opened up. And I sort of started volunteering about 8 years ago. Yeah, so just for reference, when I came in to visit, you were here and a couple of other folks, and they're basically, they work here, but you're not being paid to be here. Yes. So volunteering in a music store, basically. Yeah. Which is
fascinating. One, that you found a place where you felt comfortable enough to, you know, donate your time and expertise to, but also just kind of the state of independent music stores. I mean, it's a struggle everywhere.
Yes, yeah, unfortunately.
You know, the UK is no exception.
No.
And I did end up going to the big box store down the road.
Yeah, Gift
Music, just to kind of see what it was like. And lovely places.
Oh yeah.
And you know, you can see what that buying power gets them, but how that can also negatively impact places like RWB.
Yes.
Because you were saying that there used to be a few more stores that are just no longer.
Yeah, there used to be Banks Music Room. There used to be MOR Music. There used to be Rockola. There used to be Bulmers. And they've all gone over the last few years. Some of it down to the internet. Unfortunately, a lot of people buy online. Some of it, COVID obviously didn't help a couple of places. But yeah, it's very sad when even though people say, oh, well, you're on your own now, so you must be doing really well. It's actually nice to have the competition local, because people travel then. If you're a musician and you're going to go somewhere and see 3 or 4 shops, it's worth it. But why would you travel for 2 hours to see one shop? It just, outside of, there'll be outliers like Andertons because they're known around the world. Right. So I bet you get people who will drive there if they're visiting England just because they've seen it on YouTube. Yeah. I've done it myself. I went down to do something down that area. I was about 2 hours away, still drove across to have a look. Yeah. But generally speaking, it would still be nice to have a couple of other shops in York. But on the upside, we have had more sort of upturning certain things like strings, strings, plectrums, all the small ticket stuff, but that's what keeps you going. Yeah. In return, I do setups, I do repairs, like I say, and I do that for the shop, and so I pay a small cut to Jeff for doing that. He lets me have this space up here, which is very generous of him, which I use for teaching as well as doing some recording. But it's nice. It's a proper little sort of community shop like it used to be 30 years ago. Yeah. He's not big on the internet. He is online, but he'd rather be selling you stuff that you want to buy in person. Yeah. I like the sort of his ethos. It's good. Well, and another thing that I know, like you have local Luthiers products here, which was really cool. I posted a picture of one of the 4th Avenue build-off pieces. Yes. I went to his website and looked up all the specs and stuff because I was really, truly fascinated by what they make. Yeah. And Anthony's brilliant. I've known him a long time. He's good at what he does. And he's a nice bloke, which is more important than anything else, I always think. But, no, the 4th Avenue guitars are brilliant. I've got my own a couple. But he makes them all from home on 4th Avenue. That's where he lives, the street. That's what he named the company after. We've sold 4 or 5 of his so far, which doesn't sound a lot, but for a local luthier that nobody's heard of, in 12 months, that's a lot. Yeah. The one that you're referring to is, I think, up at £12,000. Yeah. Yeah. Both in money and in actual rate, because it's hand-hammered copper. You could take it home, but you'd need a second plane. Yeah. But yes, it's a phenomenal piece of engineering. All hand done to most of it. He hand winds his own pickups. That must have taken him, I don't know how many hours. Yeah. The price itself reflects partly materials and partly the hours he's
time and labor.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
And I don't think he desperately wants to sell that one because he likes showing it off to people.
Oh yeah.
But if it ever does sell, it's a good day for him.
Yeah. The other fun thing about those guitars specifically is that they all come with these gorgeous carved stands that they live in that are built specifically for the guitar.
Yeah, and a hard case, and it's a lot of money, but when you look at some of the factory-made stuff that you can buy from some of the big brands, I believe Martin have just released an acoustic John Mayer signature model, £20,000. Yeah. And I'm sure it's lovely, but it's got nowhere near the amount of work gone into it that it has.
Yeah.
And I've got nothing against Martin, but that's a big price tag.
Yeah. The thing that immediately struck me when I walked in here was that this feels like it's local.
Yeah.
This, you're selling local people's stuff. You have really interesting kind of curated collection of things.
Yeah.
And we're in this studio, which means that you are bringing new musicians in, and you are creating music here. So it is kind of like a cultural touchstone for the city and the community that you're in, which is just
trying to be
the value that it's really hard to quantify because those places are rare and they're getting rarer.
Yeah, it's a shame. We have some across the country. I know there's one in Leeds that's fairly sort of similar in the, likes to have stuff in that's local as well. But
is that the one with the pub in it?
Yes.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
I wish I could get out there.
But generally speaking, unfortunately, there's a lot of big box things like your Gear for Music. A lot of people buy now online from Toman and things like that, which I do understand. You know, not everybody's got the time to go and find a place that has the product thereafter.
Right.
I get it. But I just want to play the guitar that I'm buying before I buy it. I want to make sure it's right. Even if there's 20 of them in the shop, you've got to pick the right one.
Exactly. Less
important now a degree. It's less important if you're buying a pack of strings or a plectrum or a pedal even. But, but the actual instruments themselves, they've got to be played. And I think it's getting harder simply because I don't know if less people are playing guitar these days, or maybe more parents are just willing to take a risk on a £99 starter kit that's got a really awful guitar and a really awful amp, and then wonder why the little Johnny didn't take it up as an instrument. It's because they hadn't got a decent one. Right. You don't have to spend thousands, but £100 for everything is probably going to be not very good.
It's interesting because I played a bunch of instruments here, and then I did go down to Gear for Music and found a very interesting variety of instruments around that price point, and I in some cases was truly impressed by how good they were. Yeah. And I feel like in the, not necessarily the beginner market, but in the kind of lower end gigging musician kind of price point, the variety of things that are available that are quality is very impressive. I mean, you guys have stuff we don't get, you know?
Yeah. I mean, the stuff that's, most of my guitars, and there's 79 of them, most of them are anywhere between about 200 and 700. So not crazy money. Right. I've got a couple of outliers. I've got a Maton that was 1700, and a David Bowie signature model Super, which is over there, that was 1300. But generally speaking, they're all what I would call affordable. Yeah. But none of them I ever think, oh, I wish this was the such and such brand instead. I think part of that as well helps that I do my own setups. Yeah. Because you get a cheap guitar set up badly, it's awful. But you get an expensive guitar set up badly, it's also awful. So that's not, the problem isn't the guitar in that case. Just give it a half decent setup and it's amazing. I would also recommend change the strings. Yeah. Because if you buy a cheap guitar, and 100, 200, 300 pounds even, they're not necessarily coming with the best strings, or they've been on a while. Right. If it's been sat in a warehouse for 6 months before it's sent to the shop, and then sat in the shop for 6 months before you buy it, those strings are a year old. Yeah. Just put some new strings on. It'll change the guitar completely from day one. And I think a lot of people who play guitar, they know that, but beginners don't. That's where they fall down. They're not necessarily getting the best advice. Right. I think one of the big problems is the internet. You ask a question on a forum, how many different answers do you get to a simple question? What strings should I use? You will be told, oh, get Ernie Balls. And then someone else will go, don't use them, they're awful, get the Dario. I wouldn't touch the Dario, you want Rotor Sound. Rotor Sound, they're terrible, get Marty. There's just a complete breakdown online when it comes to information sometimes.
Not that you shouldn't trust people who you watch YouTube videos about.
No, YouTube doesn't lie. YouTube never lies.
Remember that. We've got a lot of people in a group chat that will be very happy to hear that. But yeah, I think you summed it up perfectly, that like there is something to be said about going to a place and talking to a person with expertise who has a vested interest in making sure that you get the right thing. Yeah. And that it is the right solution for what you're trying to do.
Yeah, if people come in and they ask me a question, because I teach guitar and because I gig and play, I will tell them if it's my opinion versus if it's a fact. Some things are facts, that's fair enough. Sure. But also I will never push a guitar on somebody who just because I think it's the best guitar in the shop. That's irrelevant.
Yeah.
But my opinion doesn't matter. I could think this is the best guitar in the world. You could play it and think, well, that's awful. And that might be because you don't like Strats or something as simple as that.
I do not like Strats.
No. I mean, that's fine. You can be wrong.
Yeah.
But
there's a very funny video that I did about the term that I said that Strats are the Corvette of guitars.
right.
That, an old guy will roll up in one and think that he's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But I have softened in that opinion. I actually bought 2 of them this past year. So
fair enough.
Yeah.
I'll let you live. But no, it's all down to personal choice. If somebody comes in, I always say sit with some guitars. Don't just go on the looks. Pick the ones up you like the look of, but then sit with them.
Yeah.
Because you might years ago, I used to always want a Les Paul. When I first started, I loved the look of Les Pauls. And when I eventually sat down with one, I hated the feel of it. I love them now. I've moved, things have changed, as they do. But yeah, at the time, if I'd had the money, I probably would have just bought one online, not knowing. And then I'd have got this thing that I didn't like for however many hundreds of pounds at the time it was. Always sit with them. Yeah. Always try them.
So let's do like a rapid fire gear kind of question. So do you use charts? If so, how are you organizing, managing those?
I rarely use charts. I have on my notes on my phone some for one of the bands, but generally speaking, I try and remember them.
What about solo gigs?
Solo gigs, again, I have my phone there in case I'm asked a request that I don't know, and I'll look it up. Otherwise, I tend to try and remember as much as possible.
Got it.
And it's there just in case I don't remember something.
All right, you're walking out the door to do a solo gig. What is the guitar you're picking up?
If it's acoustic, it will be my Maton Performer. If it's an electric one where I do looping, what it will be at the moment, I would say I've got a vintage V62 Telecaster shape, which is just brilliant. Love a Tele, can't go wrong.
Standard setup, just two singles?
Two single coils. Haven't even done anything with the wiring on that, which is unusual for me. I usually add splits or bass cuts, treble bleeds, all sorts, but that's just standard.
Gotcha. You mentioned your looper. Are there any other pieces of gear that you just are essential, like don't leave the house without them?
Compression pedal.
Okay.
Every gig has a compression pedal, whether it's just pure acoustic straight in or full band setup.
Do you have one that you prefer?
At the moment, I'm really liking the Pictronics, the micro compression one they've got, which is the Philosopher's Stone. It's a brilliant little pedal.
Are you a direct guy? Do you like? So if you have a gig where you need an amp, what's the amp?
If I'm going to use, if I'm taking an amp at the moment, it's my Egnator Rebel.
Okay.
Head and cab. If I'm going direct, I've got a HX Stomp, and I use that.
We're big fans of the Helix stuff here.
It's just brilliant. And I didn't used to like Line 6 at all. I think it's because when they had the spiders and things that were awful.
Yeah.
They were just...
Not, except for the one that's downstairs in the sales room. No,
that's terrible. I wouldn't buy that. See, we're honest here.
Yeah. It's fair enough.
But, then they teamed up with Bogner and did some valve amps. They were quite nice. And I think since then, they've come leaps and bounds with the modelling stuff as well. I've always liked their reverbs and delays. I think they've been very good at them. Yeah. But everything else has caught up now, and it's fantastic.
Do you have a preferred vocal mic?
Currently, I'm using this one. Where's it gone?
Is Lewitt on the stand? Or?
Sorry, this one. The Aston Stealth.
Okay.
So I've been gigging with that recently. And I have got a Lewitt MTP 550, which I use as well. So between those two. But that's awesome.
In-ears, what are you using?
I've got the X-Vive in-ears set, which is fairly new to me. Never really bothered with them till this last year, but they're phenomenal. It does make a big difference. Solo, I don't use, doesn't bother. Right. I don't need it for that. I can hear everything. But yeah, in the six-piece soul band, that makes a huge difference to everything.
Just using universal earpieces?
It's the ones that came with it.
Okay.
Yeah, they do a set. They sell it separate altogether. I got the whole lot.
Nice.
Just thought one may as well.
Cool.
Yes.
Well, that's pretty much all the stuff I wanted to cover. You know, I feel like we got a really good handle on what things look like here versus, you know, in the States, whatever. And I appreciate RWB for letting us
Anytime,
come in here and, you know, just shoot the shit with you guys. It's been phenomenal. So, Michael, thank you very much.
Absolute pleasure.